So we're going to continue our work with right triangles. Today we're going to focus on the 30, 60, 90 right triangle. We can do a similar technique for solving the right triangle today as we did yesterday with the 45, 45 right triangles. When we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the leg sizes are a little bit different than they were for the 45-45. So it happened that on the 45-45 triangle, the two leg lengths were the same. But on the 30-60 90 triangle, because the angle is smaller, the side opposite or the leg opposite will be smaller as well. So this 30 will open up to a shorter leg than the 60-degree angle. So we'll call that the short leg, SL. And across from the 60-degree angle, that'll be a longer leg. We'll call that the long leg, LL. But still across from the right angle will be the hypotenuse. That doesn't change. So the hypotenuse will always be the longest leg. Okay, so we're going to make a table or a little chart that we can use to help us move from length to length. All I need to know is one side length and I can find the other two, as long as I know I'm working with a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Now keep in mind, when I have my angles labeled, I only need to have two of the angles labeled because the three angles together will be 180 degrees. So if I know two of them, if I know only the 30 and the 90-degree angle, I can figure out that the last one has to be 60. There's no other choice. Again, because all the angles need to add to be 180. So let's fill out our little box in the same way, and then we'll do our patterns and math that we're going to have to do around the outside of the box as we fill it in. So I'll start with the short leg, move on to the long leg. Hypotenuse will be in the last section. So let's say I know the short leg. Well, to get from the short leg to the hypotenuse, I'm going to multiply by 2. To get from the short leg to the long leg, I'll multiply by the square root of 3. I always like knowing the short leg first. That seems to me to be the easiest one to work with, but that's not always going to be the case. So if I'm given the hypotenuse, what I'm going to do is I'll move to the short leg by dividing by 2, and then from the short leg I'll move up to the long leg by multiplying by the square root of 3. If I'm given the long leg, I'll move to the short leg because I like to work with the short leg the most, so I'll always kind of move to the short leg. That one's divide by the square root of 3, and then I can take the short leg to the hypotenuse by multiplying by 2. So it's similar to yesterday, but a little bit different. So let's see it in action. We'll probably run through 3 of these today. One where we're given each scenario. So for example 1. I'm going to draw my triangle a little bit different. I'll label this as 30. Here's my right angle. And we'll start with the one I like the best, and that is knowing the short leg. And so let's say I know the short leg is, let's go with 32. Just kind of made up a number. It doesn't really matter. I'm just putting something in there so we can kind of work through the process. Okay? So I only know the 30 and the 90, and that's enough for me to assume that this is a 30, 60, 90. Again, 30 plus 90 is 120. And so this last angle has to be 60 because 120 plus 60 would be a 180. And the sum of all the angles in a triangle has to equal 180. So I just need the two of them. That's enough for me. I still want to figure out the labels for the sides so I know what I have and I know what I'm given. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. Let's call this one, just for a variable, x. Across from the short, or the small angle, is the short leg here, so I know 32 is the short leg. This last angle, like I said, even though it's not labeled on there, I can assume that that's a 60-degree angle, and across from that, we'll call that side Y, and that is my long leg. So I'm going to make that table, or that little chart that we used, just kind of duplicate it here and fill in the pieces. So I have the short leg first, long leg second, hypotenuse last. I know that the short leg is 32. That was the measure that was given for the short leg. The long leg is Y. The hypotenuse is X. And now I need to work my way through and figure those missing pieces out. Because I know the short leg, I can work off the top alone. So to get to the hypotenuse, I times 2. To get to the short leg, I times the square root of 3. And so my x is 32 times 2, or 64. And my y is 32 times the square root of 3, and there's nothing more I can do with that. So there are my answers. So once you get the table sort of organized, it makes the math a little bit easier. Yesterday, an assignment was turned in where they only had one answer for each triangle. Remember, on these problems, we're going to be working with finding 2 solutions each time. So be careful of that. Make sure that you solve for both variables in the problem. Okay, so let's run through another example. One that maybe requires us to do a little bit different thinking, where I'm not given the short leg. So I'll draw my next triangle. Here's my second example. Here's my 30. Here's my 60. Let's say this time I know that this side, I'm blocking the camera view, sorry, the side across from the the 60-degree angle is what I'm given. So let's say that one is 25 times the square root of 3. And then across from the 30-degree angle is the short leg. Let's say that one's A. Across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse. Let's say that one's B. And so then let's make my table again and fill in my information. I have a short leg, I have a long leg, I have a hypotenuse. So short leg across from the 30-degree angle, long leg across from the 60-degree angle, hypotenuse across from the 90-degree angle. So the one that was given was the long leg, 25 times the square root of 3. So I'm going to look at my original picture and figure out which of the pieces of math I'm going to have to do. Well, I like to get back to the short leg, so I do that by dividing by the square root of 3. Divide by the square root of 3. I started writing something that I don't want to write just yet. And then I'll take from the short leg up to the hypotenuse by multiplying by 2. So I'm going to have to, again, like get myself organized and put those in. So the short leg was labeled A, and the hypotenuse was labeled B. So A is the long leg, 25 times the square root of 3, divided by the square root of 3. We saw this yesterday. That just cancels out, so 25. And B is A, whatever A is, times 2. So A is 25 times 2, or 50. And again, there I've got my math done with the problem. We will finish off with one where I'm given the hypotenuse. And then, like I said, it's your time to practice, so you can go ahead and check out the math on either on KudaWorks, or you can download the worksheet. So last example, example 3, given the hypotenuse. Let's make my triangle a little bit different again. Let's go here. Let's say I'm given only that one. I'm going to be given the hypotenuse today, and I'm going to make the hypotenuse. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to go with Let's do that one as, I don't know why I'm thinking so long about this, 24 times the square root of 3. So we'll make that one 24 times the square root of 3. Again, I know that that side is the hypotenuse because it is across from the 90-degree angle. I also know that if I'm given a 90-degree angle and a 60-degree angle, the other angle by default has to be 30 degrees. That's just the way the math works. All the angles have to be 180. So across from the 30-degree angle is my short leg. Across from the 60-degree angle is my long leg. I'll call my short leg M, my long leg N. Those are the variables that I'm going to be solving for. So again, I'll make the organizer that we've been working on the last 2 days now. And I'll fill that in. I've got the short leg. The short leg was M. The long leg is N. And the hypotenuse is 24 times the square root of 3. So I will go ahead and label again the things that I know. So from the hypotenuse, to get back to the short leg, I'm going to divide by 2. I go back to what we wrote down in the first. So what we wrote down, that very first thing, look at that. So hypotenuse to get back to the short leg, divide by 2. I put this square root of 3 in here on purpose because I don't want you to think just because you see a square root of 3 that you're going to divide by the square root of 3. It could be in the answer. Those things show up every once in a while. So we're going to divide by 2. And then I need to get from the short leg to the long leg, so that's going to be this one. I'll do times the square root of 3. So I'll start with getting the short leg first. I like to work with the short leg, so I'm going to do that one first. M is 24 times the square root of 3 divided by 2. I can reduce that, divide the top and the bottom both by 2, so I get 12 times the square root of 3. It's just reducing it like a fraction. And so now that is my short leg, and to get my long leg N, I will take the short leg, 12 times the square root of 3, and multiply it by the square root of 3. We've seen this before. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that right there is going to work out to be just 3. So I'm going to end up doing 12 times 3, or 36. And so again, real minimal math, but not something that, everybody on the street knows how to do real quickly. It seems more confusing when you look at it than it is. If you make yourself a nice little organizer, hopefully you can talk your way through it. So again, you can go do your homework on KudaWorks, or you can download the worksheet, take a picture of your answers, and send them to me. So have a good day. Email me if you have any questions.